Hello, America. President Trump and Congress. All students pay close attention here. I am the petitioner of the Constitution's checks and balances, which gives me a status quo. The status quo, as you see, is the existing state, which is the Constitution checks and balances, which has been petitioned by me, Jesha Miller. As you can see, the state of affairs states that I am the petitioner, so it is me against the government's best attorney to prove by using the Constitution checks and balances that the entire judicial branch of government is corrupt, that the legislative branch of government is corrupt. That is Congress, Senate, and the House. And in proving so, and maintaining my status quo, I am owed $350 million. All students pay attention. This is unprecedented, meaning never happened before, but it is within our Constitution of the United States. The checks and balances are an essential part of the Constitution, meaning absolutely necessary, extremely important, crucial, mandatory. Now, mandatory means that it is required by law, indispensable, cannot be done without. Obligatory, meaning required by legal, moral, and other rules of these politicians from the Senate and the House. You need to see it in its entirety. Those are the meanings of which this is. My status quo is that of the Constitution checks and balances, which can impeach President Donald Trump for being in defiance of the Constitution checks and balances, refusing to adhere to the Constitution checks and balances, which has irrefutable evidence that the entire judicial branch of government, including the United States Supreme Court, is corrupt. Now, and the importance of this and my status quo, checks and balances in the United States government and why we need them and how they work. You need to see that. You can put it on freeze mode so you can get every part of this right here. Because without the system checks and balances, there will be a constant struggle between the President, Congress, and the Supreme Court. Those are three branches of government. Judicial branch, which I'm telling you is corrupt. The motive for corruption in the United States Supreme Court was to deny $50 million and cover up the crime by Indiana Vandenberg County Judge David Kiley. Now, I'm going to be showing you evidence of all that I say so that I will get the backing of a nation. Because, as I'm stating to you, and this says, this is mandatory by law. This being mandatory by law, then why has not President Trump adhered to the Constitution and brung them up? Because he's been called out. They gotta be checked. This is the whole point what I'm getting to. They have to be checked. Here, House Ethics Committee, Bob Goodlotty. Put it on freeze mode because it's kind of small. You might have to blow it up later. What this is like I'm saying, it's the Constitution's checks and balances. That was Bob Goodlotty. Right here, Department of Justice Office Inspector General Michael Horowitz. where he's been sent a fax to report to Congress that the entire judicial branch is corrupt. The fax has a motion for the United States Supreme Court to concede to the Constitution checks and balances requiring they be checked. Also, Investigations Office was called by the fax to the 7th Circuit, where they got these crooked judges to conceal their own corruption. Now, as I said, that the entire judicial branch of government was corrupt, and this includes the United States Supreme Court. What you see in right here is a motion for the United States Supreme Court, addressed to the United States Supreme Court. We need to get that right there. What you see, calling for the United States Supreme Court to concede to the Constitution checks and balances and be checked. In addition to being checked, to pay $350 million because of continued oppression. Because it started out at $50 million. Remember, I told you it started out at $50 million. They continue refusing to adhere to the demands of the Constitution. They've been caught. So these are corrupt officials. They've been caught. So they have committed a crime pursuant to Title 241, which is conspiracy to deny rights and oppression. Remember, I said this started off at $50 million. Now it's escalated to $350 million. What did you just see? There it is right there. So, all Americans, all students, do not forget the police. You're going to be called out to stand in allegiance to the Constitution checks and balances, that they must be checked. As I say, my status quo. You maintain your status quo because this is government. And as you saw in the movie Enemy of the State with Will Smith, they did everything they could. And the first thing they're going to do is to deny you this money. And as I said, this started out at $50 million. Here you got federal judge Richard Young. I'm just showing you the court motions. And in this, he says, plaintiff Jesha Miller has responded to the order to show cause. He argues that his claim should proceed. He has attacked a portion of a state court criminal case transcript in which his attorney argued that none of the veneer nor the jury were black. It is possible that this is the basis of his claim of government corruption and violations of his constitutional rights. The state criminal drug offense in the case Vanderburgh County Circuit Court resulted in a finding of guilt in 1998. Mr. Miller's post-judgment appeals and proceedings were complete more than 10 years ago. In his case number 82 CO1 9703 CF 0327. There you can see that. Now, nothing in Mr. Miller's response to order to show cause causes to change the court's determination that his complaint is frivolous, and fails to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. His claims of unfettered access to the media are baseless. Now, my claims to the media, CNN, CBS, ABC, NBC, the entire gambit, to expose government corruption by using the Constitution checks and balances, which nobody took. CNN didn't report on the Constitution checks and balances. ABC has not reported on the Constitution checks and balances. Nobody. His claim the government owes him $50 million is frivolous. Mr. Miller's motion demanding enforcement of preliminary injunctive relief is denied as frivolous. Frivolous means it ain't got no basis. and is dismissed, and failure to state a claim upon which relief can be granted pursuant to Title 18 United States 28 United States Code. Now, by the common sense of all Americans, is $50 million relief? That's what I'm asking for, relief. He says, I do not state a claim of relief, which is $50 million. Okay? Now, I present to the people, in maintaining my status quo as the petitioner for the Constitution, checks and balances, I present evidence. Here it states, transcripts is what he was looking at. I'm David Cowley. At this point, there is no black people in the jury, and there is no black people in the jury panel. We have a right to object to that. I can tell you that I don't believe the law will support it. But I think that if we want to do that, Mr. Miller, we need to do it right now. And then I say, yes, we'll do, object to that right now. These are the transcripts that you're looking at right now. Now, my attorney says my client objects to the facts that none of the veneer, that's the people to pick from. It's 50 white people. It ain't no black people, so there ain't gonna be no black people in the jury. Real quick, fast, and in a hurry. And this is based upon an assertion that he is entitled to a jury of his peers. The component of race should be included in the concept of peers. There is no black people. There are no peers. None of mine. Nobody is black. The fact that there are no black people within this veneer, I think this causes a jury not to be a jury of my client's peers. Okay? So let's take it right here. We're going to get double deep into this. I'm going to prove the entire judicial branch of government is corrupt. I don't think Indiana is in full compliance with the federal government's motor voter registration law. They're not in compliance because you got 50 white people to pick from here, and the judge had to correct that under 28 U.S. United States Code. As a result of that, we don't get a fair cross-section in the veneer. As a result of that, my client's rights under the federal and the state constitution to a fair and impartial jury, as mandated. We said mandate, it means mandatory by law. Through the 14th Amendment and through the federal legislation, I think that's been violated. That's been violated. And as you see, I'm saying, the court, which is who you just saw, Judge David Cowley, show it overruled. This man just overruled the federal and the state constitutions. That's an unconstitutionally impaneled jury. I says, there is a violation, Your Honor. I got it underlined. You can put it on the freeze mode. Because it stands suspended in time right here, right back to the time when they used the courts to re-enslave the blacks after the 13th Amendment freed us in abolishment of slavery, and here they go doing it again. They have reverted back to what they were doing again, in violation of the 13th Amendment, imposing slavery. All America stand up right now because the United States Supreme Court and the rest of the courts have reverted back to what they was doing. Now, for all of those foreign countries, you can see, yeah, that's the clerk certifying that this is all real. And for those that really wanted to know, that is a crime. Under Title 18, Section 243, what the judge did. What they did was to deter the judges from doing this, from violating these rights. That's a statutory prohibition. It's prohibited. They did it anyway. That's why the checks and balances are an essential part of the Constitution. That's why the checks and balances is absolutely necessary. It is inevitable That means it is certain to happen. They never wanted to give us equality to begin with. This had to be by force. Power concedes to nothing but by the demands. I have a status quo of the Constitution, checks and balances, which is mandatory by law, of which President Trump and everybody, Congress, all of them gotta adhere to. You gotta hear me. You gotta come see me. It's me against your best man. Go get your best man. Come on now. All we require to is for it to be checked. Because as of right now, I just showed you that the scales of justice are unbalanced when a judge can overrule the Constitution, federal and the state's constitutions. Powers denied government. Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. Get it right there. Powers denied government. This is a habeas corpus. I gotta get this on because it's time for me to get paid. I'm trying to tell you costs. The Constitution, checks and balances. That's right, the NFL, pay close attention. Come see me, Roger Goodell, because y'all got money for this. I need that money because you paid money, had money up there to... This stops inequality. The checks and balances stops social injustice. That's them police stopping us for a while. We got 4 deep because we black in the car. This stops that. It stops police brutality. Why? Because it holds them accountable. That's what the Constitution, checks and balances does, and that's what the President of the United States didn't want, and that's what Congress has evaded, which is mandatory by law. All America, this is the one time of one accord. All we want is one thing: to address the Constitution, checks and balances, which is mandatory by law, which upholds the integrity of the Constitution. That's what that does. And you got the President of the United States refusing to uphold the integrity of the Constitution. The Declaration of Independence states that he cannot be the President of the United States. Calls for his impeachment. I'm going to tell you what, bust a bubble. They just, as I say, Cavanaugh, trying to put in another justice of the United States Supreme Court, is pulling the wool over the people's eyes when the government is already corrupt. It had to be cleaned up, had to be addressed. The Constitution, checks and balances first and foremost. Takes precedence over all matters. What does that mean? Don't matter what y'all doing, stop it. Address the Constitution, checks and balances right now. You got to see who. This is more important than anything that you got to do. But the President of the United States has evaded the Constitution, checks and balances, refusing to adhere to the Constitution, checks and balances. His supreme duty is to preserve, to protect, and defend the Constitution, checks and balances, because the checks and balances uphold the integrity of the Constitution. It's time for checkout time for President Trump. What did it say? I told you. Yeah. The Inspector General of the United States, Michael Horowitz, report to Congress that the entire judicial branch is corrupt. They all evade the Constitution, checks and balances, because if they get checked, they call. The checks and balances holds them accountable, and then be held accountable for the crimes that they committed. I just showed you that was a crime. I just showed you the United States Supreme Court itself is refusing to adhere. How they going to enforce the law when they refusing and they violating the law themselves? What I just said. That is a power denied government, the habeas corpus. And this is what the Constitution, back to the checks and balances, said was going to happen. This is what happened because it's inevitable. Inevitable means this is certain to happen. Man is a fallen creature, susceptible to money, power, and pussy. I'm just calling it like it is. Women do not get offended. It's a thing. That's what men are susceptible to. Now, as we break off to this, I'll take it to you where I showed you it takes precedence over all matters. Let's get to the United States Supreme Court, because we get to the United States Supreme Court. But first, before we go there, the FBI, part of the Judicial Branch of Government, the Justice Department. I got them right here. Here we go. reference to investigate and enforce Title 18, Section 241, which is conspiracy to deny rights. If two or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state in the free exercise and enjoyment of the right or the privilege secured to him by the Constitution or the laws of the United States, they shall be fined under this. That writing up there, that's the FBI. They was called in, federal judge. As I told you, default of the 14th Amendment. That's Judge Richard Young again, $50 million. Can't nobody cry and there be no tears. Right now it's $350 million because you continued the oppression. Now, we're going to get it down to it. This is the United States Supreme Court. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Did we get that in there? Oh, that's their stamp. Oh, all this data is official. That's right. Petition is entitled to injunctive relief for my immediate relief from the illegal imprisonment with reparations from judgment and proceedings in the Indiana Vandenberg Circuit County Court that was so lawless that imprisonment pursuant to them is void. And therefore res judicata. Res judicata, what res judicata means, put fat on head. That means that the previous judgment, the judgment of which you took my freedom in violation of the Constitution's 14th Amendment, was the right to due process, the right to a trial by a fair and impartial jury as guaranteed by the 6th Amendment of the Constitution, the right to have a fair and impartial jury, and they imposed an all-white jury. Ha! Here we go. That ain't no good. That's void. Gotta release me. But did the United States Supreme Court do it? No, because then when the United States Supreme Court leaves me in the illegal imprisonment when it's their duty to release that citizen after checking the records, after you seen the records of what they did, I gotta go. My freedom. They didn't do it. Is inapplicable in a habeas corpus proceeding. What I told you about the habeas corpus proceeding. The exclusion of jurors on account of race is a crime. What we went to, powers denied government. So, if they did it one time, if I do it one time, if I do it 2 times, do it 3 times, I'm a wife, yeah. So here we go. The second time, habeas corpus. Petition requires judiciary to account for a man's imprisonment. The judiciary or the justices of the Supreme Court, which must review and give judgment affirming or reversing the conviction. Because what I told you, that's void. So, the imprisonment cannot be shown to conform with the fundamental requirements of law. The individual is entitled to its immediate relief. The habeas corpus is guaranteed by the Constitution, which is violated by counsel. Now, here we go. That's one time that they did it. That's 2 times that they did it. 1, 2. The United States Supreme Court commits an act against the law imposing slavery itself. I got them. Why they evading the Constitution checks and balances? Why the president evading it? Why Congress evading it? Because they caught money and power. $50 million. Oh, $50 million. That's a good lick. $350 million. That's the lottery. Now, as I said, they took it the next step further. So, I know white people don't care about a black man's rights, may not care about a black man's right to freedom. But in America, I'm a veteran. I serve to protect your right to freedom, justice, and equality in America. So, hey, fair exchange ain't no robbery. So now white people step up to the plate. To conceal this, they violate the Constitution's First Amendment right to freedom of speech press. And it says the purpose of the speech press clauses has evidently been to protect parties in the free publications of matters of public concern. If the United States Supreme Court is corrupt, it's a matter of public concern that all Americans must know because it's an appellate court process. And in the process, then that means if you didn't get paid or if you didn't get your freedom in the state courts, then you can go to the federal courts. If you didn't get it in the federal courts, you can go to the appellate courts. If you didn't get to the appellate courts, it goes all the way to the Supreme Court because at stake right now is a man's freedom. And you did this to a veteran of the United States Air Force who served in the Vietnam era. Hey, and for your information, Mr. Trump, I did protect Air Force One when it came into Kinslow Air Force Base. So I protect the President of the United States. And here we go. To secure their right to a free discussion of public events and public measures and enables every citizen, that's include me, that is the Chinese, that's include me, that's the Mexicans, that's include me, that's the white people, that's include me, to bring the government and any person in authority to the bar of public opinion by any just criticism upon their conduct in the exercise of authority which the people have conferred upon him. We conferred this, the right to be the President of the United States upon you, President Trump. We conferred this upon those 100 senators in Congress. But now, if you done messed up, you gotta be checked. This is the whole point. They try not to be checked because they caught. They be held accountable for what they did. This is what it says when they did an evil. The evils to prevent it were not the censorship of the press merely, because the press can't censor this, so it's not being told to the public. The public gotta know this. But any action of the government by means of which it might prevent such free and general discussion of public matters as seems absolutely essential to prepare the people for an intelligent exercise of their rights as citizens. I'm gonna show you what they did. Freeze my bank account. Enemy of the state. Will Smith, you hear me? All y'all moviegoers. Y'all hear what? This is the real. This ain't the movie. This is the real. Not only they freed my bank account. Okay, so they freed my bank account, then they turn around. They garnish my wages. So now I'm not getting my full check. So I got bills to pay. I got a status quo. My status quo is that you owe me $350 million. What I'm talking about. The status quo. Existing state of affairs, especially regarding social or political issues. The Constitution checks and balances is a political issue where they owe me $350 million. Check me out. Here it is. The clerk to Tanya Pratt. Immediate restitution enforcing the First Amendment right to freedom of the press. That's right. CNN, ABC, CBS, everybody got to see it. And all of y'all looking, first question, why ain't CNN covered it? It's a government cover-up and they got to be a part of it for it to work. And pay $200 million for Judicial Branch to follow the 14th Amendment right to freedom of the press and to stop any further violations of Title 18, Section 241. That's what I was telling you about. There it is right there. Put it on freeze mode. Does look like federal judge Tanya Pratt. We just showed you. That's a guaranteed right to freedom of the press. To expose corrupt officials. That's what the First Amendment's right to. See, they trick y'all on that freedom of speech press. Here you got the judges interfering. They said they can't interfere. They said it was evil. for the media to cover it up. It says it's evil for government to do it in any manner. And here it is, the judges, because I told you they covering up their own branch of government. Here it is, I showed you. That's the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, supposed to report to Congress and the United States Attorney General, Sessions, Attorney General, which he didn't do. Oh, here we got it. And Agent Gray, oh, there it is. The FBI, y'all ain't reporting on this. The judge committed a crime. Y'all ain't arrest him, y'all ain't indict him, y'all ain't done nothing. I said the entire judicial branch of government, which is the Justice Department, everybody up. I got them all. That's why they evading this. All America stand up in one accord. This is my status quo. It's me against the world. Tupac, I got you, baby. Yeah, me against the world. And they got to be checked. It's a simple thing. Be checked. They cannot be checked so the integrity of the Constitution not being upheld. That's why I put that up there. Mandatory by law. That's why I put this up here. Powers denied government. That's right. It's the habeas corpus. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be denied, delayed. I'm gonna tell you how important the Constitution's checks habeas corpus is. Before the Constitution would be ratified, the people had to have some kind of way to secure their right to freedom if they was held in violation of the Constitution and laws of the United States, and that is the Constitution's habeas corpus. They check the records. If they says what you say, they gotta let you go, man. The motive for corruption, or as I told you, was to cover up the crime. That's a crime. Now, like I said, for the white folks, they violating that First Amendment right to freedom of speech, press. So if they violated mine, they're going to get you too. If they violated mine, they're going to use what they did already before to die yours too. So you cannot let it go now. You see, these rights don't defend themselves. And you see, the Constitution checks and balances absolutely necessary, because if it wasn't necessary, they would be getting away with this. If it wasn't necessary, President Trump would have Cavanaugh. He'd replace 2 United States Supreme Court justices on the United States Supreme Court, where the entire judicial branch of government is corrupt. That's the wool what he pulled over your eyes. And what they do then, they got their boys in. They continue doing law as they want to. The $350 million, I'm gonna make it plain, simple, sweet, short. Start at the beginning, jump to the middle, and this gonna be the end. Because without going by the rule of law, there's envy, there's jealousy, there's racism, and there is prejudice. So you have to go by the rule of law to get what you're supposed to get. Because if left up to man, yo, oh boy, man, I really don't like he got that 350 million. Man, I really don't like that mansion he got on here. Man, I really don't like that I got to continue to work day by day by day when he rich. Good golly goose. Everybody want to be rich, but you got to be special. I'm sent you know me by name. YESHA. Go to it. It's a prophecy. And the Concord. This is what I was sent to do. I'm here. It is what it is. I'm upholding the Constitution, checks and balances. What they just did, putting these guys in, and the president refusing to honor the Constitution, checks and balances. That calls for his impeachment. I'm just saying what it is. Here it is, right there. Takes precedence over all matters. Stop whatever you're doing. Shut the judicial branch of government down. You gotta be checked. And once again, Richard Young, pay the $350 million owed. I gotta maintain my status quo. Otherwise, they do what they've been doing. How did they do what they've been doing? They do it like this. Southern Indiana. That's a school, yeah. University of Southern Indiana. This is Samuel S. Preston. You know what I did? What'd you do? I called for the colleges to organize a protest demanding Congress address the checks and balances petition by Jesha Miller, which is obligatory, meaning mandatory by law. The checks and balances is supported by irrefutable evidence, which I already showed you. The United States Supreme Court imposed slavery. That's prohibited by the 13th Amendment. That's a violation of the law, what they doing. Violates the Sixth Amendment right to a fair and impartial jury. A statutory prohibition, which is the exclusion of jurors on account of race. Prohibition meaning forbidden expressly by law. Now, call on them to have the students protest. This is how this is played. Because when they do what they did, then we put the students on the front line to protest for government to adhere to the Constitution, checks and balances. It's a simple thing. Put up or shut up. You got to walk to walk, talk to talk. Easy. Prove it. Here I am. I'm proving mine right here on YouTube. Now, proving this. Where we at time? I got to go. Now, to prove this, then they told me to cease and desist. And not only that, in addition, you are banned from the campus and all property owned by the University of Southern Indiana. Is this what the staff of University of Southern Indiana is doing to a veteran who served to protect the rights, freedom, justice in America? I can't come on the campus. There it is in writing. Plain and simple, short and sweet. Why? Because I'm getting the students to organize to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. Then here we go again. University of Evansville. This is the chairman, Department of Law, Politics, and Society. He teaches politics. He's been called to do the same thing. He said, I received several messages from you over the past few days regarding your concerns over the checks and balances system. I'm not exactly sure how exactly this matter is related to me or what you think I can do about it. I call for you to have the students protest demanding Constitution, checks and balances. It is already right there in the front. Put it on freeze mode. They know what it's called for, Pong. And he says, in any event, I would prefer that you cease and desist from contacting me. This man is the chairman of the Human Relations. And he don't want nobody to contact him because he's not going to call the students to protest to expose government checks and balances. Mandatory. He teaches this. Wait a minute. Southern Indiana said I can't even come on that. And I got another one where the mayor don't want me in the civic center. They do not want me on public property. And my status quo is the power of the Constitution, checks and balances, where I can impeach the president. The judges has definitely got to go. They impeach from all this. They consider it by denying the First Amendment, the guaranteed right to freedom of the press. Let's go. My status quo is judge, pay me, shut it down. President Trump, shut it down. You got to adhere to the Constitution, checks and balances. Y'all must be checked for corruption and abuse of power in every branch of government. That's why Congress don't want to see me. I'm going to tell you what. All America. This is for the uniting of all Americans to stand and uphold the integrity of the Constitution, which, as you see, these government corrupt officials are refusing to adhere to the demands of the Constitution. Short and plain. They corrupt officials. They have violated the law. They're refusing to to adhere to the law, because then they'll be held accountable. What they're saying that we're gonna get it real quick. Be the last thing we're gonna do right here. John 19-21. And this is the verdict. The light is coming to the world, but people love darkness instead of light because their deeds are evil. First Amendment sit there and saying that that's the evil that they're doing. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light. I told you they will. Congress won't come, President won't come, for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives in truth, this is the truth must be told, comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what has been done in the sight of God. What am I going to do? Same thing that I took oath to as protecting and serving in the military, United States Air Force, protect the Constitution, United States Constitution, right to freedom, justice, and equality. The Constitution stops inequality. The Constitution checks and balances, stops inequality. The Constitution and the Constitution checks and balances stops social injustice. So y'all black people need to stand up. But NAACP leader, Mr. Johnson, he's not going to do that because he's sold out. And it stops police brutality, which the many protests have been about, but they ain't nothing done about it. But the reason why is because the Constitution checks and balances, takes action, and makes a change. The Constitution, Declaration, and the Declaration of Independence, at some time in America, this was going to happen. At some time in the history of America, this was going to happen, that the people have to stand up. A government of the people, by the people, and for the people, so the people stand up. Stop being inert people, because the inert means that you sit around and look and don't do nothing. Be a part of history and stand on this. This is my status quo. I am the petitioner for the United States Constitution, checks and balances, to uphold the integrity of the Constitution, which is mandatory by law, which Congress and the President of the United States must address. Walter Cronkite, can you come back from the dead and sign off? It's Walter Cronkite signing off. Muhammad Ali, I got him. He gonna fall in the round I call. Frederick Douglass. Humpty Dumpty on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a big fall, and now they can't put him back together again. It's checkout time for President Trump. The impeachment is inevitable. He's never wanted to be the president because it said it was a simple on the Constitution, checks and balances, or you can't be the president. He didn't want to do that. Can't nobody be mad about nothing. This is the status quo of Jesha Miller. All Americans got to see this. It's inevitable. Certain to happen at some time in America's history that it will be shown that all branches of the government are corrupt. They must be replaced. President Harry S. Truman. The buck stops with the president.